our hostess for tonight. This is their friend Bill.
Yes.
Hi, Bill.
And this is Caitlin Hart.
Catalan.
Catalan. Oh, yeah. All that day of practicing. Catalan.
So, I'm happy to be here. Welcome to all of you. I'm sorry to be a few minutes delayed, but I was so busy trying to get organized that I forgot two of the most important things. This is a Seder plate, and this is what all of the items go on for the Passover Seder. We will talk about all the stuff as we go along. But this was my mother's. This little piece of tape on the back here says Marion Bierman, and that was my mother. So I've kept this forever and used it every Passover. And I used it on Saturday night at my own home, and I washed it and put it away thinking I don't need it till next Passover. Had a fleeting thought that I should have left it out for tonight, but I put it away. So my dear friend Bill went home and got it because we need it. So all these things are going to go on here. Let me see if I can just figure out real quick what they are. This is this.
Is there a special order to it?
It's, well, you're more than welcome to look at this later. Each one of these little circles has a Hebrew word on it. So, to do it right, I should look and see. This says karpas, and that's the parsley. So the parsley goes there. I think it doesn't matter. I'll just put them on the plate so we can move ahead because we need to move ahead. And that. Put the salt water there, and there we're all ready. And then the other thing that I didn't remember to bring was this. I was just telling Kathy about this. This is a cover for matzah. So there are 3 pieces of matzah in here, and you'll find out in a few minutes why. But my son made this in a Sunday school project. I have 2 sons. This one belonged to my younger son, Mike. It says Mike up here. My older son had a Passover Seder at his home on Saturday night, and he posted pictures of his Seder. He has a picture of a very similar matzah cover that he used at his Seder. So evidently that was the Sunday school project one year for everybody in the Sunday school because all the kids made the same thing. So those are the things that I forgot to bring, and I didn't want to start the Seder without them. So I guess I should start by saying that Passover is the story of the Jews' exodus from Egypt. Passover is the story of the Jews' exodus from Egypt. And on the first 2 nights of Passover, Jewish families have what we call a Seder. And Seder means order. And I guess that just represents the order of things that they did in the course of the evening and in the course of the meal. We use this book called a Haggadah, and there are 5 of them here. You're welcome to pass them around and look at them. If we were doing this in a home, which these are usually done in homes, rather than in a congregation as a service, everyone or maybe 2 people would get a copy, and we would participate together by reading a lot of the things that are in here. It's a very lengthy text, so I picked out the most significant stuff. So we're not going to read it. So you are welcome to look at these. You're welcome to try to follow along, but it's going to be tricky to follow me because I'm jumping around from one thing to another. But you're going to get the full expanse of the Seder in terms of what we normally do. So the first thing we do, we start with the lighting of the candles. So I'm going to do that. Can I sneak by over here?
Notice she's starting to read from the back of the book.
It goes backwards. Yeah, Jewish prayer books go from right to left.
That's the only thing I learned in Hebrew class.
So I'm just going to start reading at the beginning of this book, and then I will come to the lighting the candles part. Now, in the presence of loved ones and friends, before us, the emblems of festive rejoicing, we gather for our sacred celebration. With the household of Israel, our elders and young ones, linking and bonding the past with the future, we heed once again the divine call to service, living our story that is told for all peoples, whose shining conclusion is yet to unfold. We gather to observe the Passover. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout the generations as a practice for all times. Remember the day on which you went forth from Egypt, from the house of bondage, and how God freed you with a mighty hand. And then we're going to light the candles. We're not supposed to blow these out. We're going to have to. You're not, I'm thinking these candles are going to burn for a very long time. You're not supposed to blow them out, but we might have to. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel yom tov. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings us to the holiday of Yom Tov. And in praising God, we say that all life is sacred. In kindling festive lights, we preserve life's sanctity. With every holy light we kindle, the world is brightened to a higher harmony. We praise thee, our God, majestic sovereign of all life, who hallows our lives with commandments and bids us kindle the festive holy light. And we have 4 cups of wine during the Passover Seder. You are not obligated to drink the entire cup each time, so typically everybody just takes a sip. So the first cup of wine is right now. I'm going to step over here and then I don't have to come past you again. So let me just read this section. Our story tells that in diverse ways, with different words, God gave promises of freedom to our people. With cups of wine, we recall each one of them. And I looked up a little additional piece of literature. So as we go through this, I'll call your attention to it, but let me read it right now. There are 4 cups of wine. When we begin to drink the first one, when we say the blessing for the first one, it says, I will free you from the burdens of the Egyptians. And the word free is emphasized. And then the second cup of wine, we will say, I will deliver you from their bondage. And for the third cup of wine, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. And the fourth cup of wine, I will take you to be my people. And I thought that was significant. 4 times in the course of the service, we partake of the wine, symbol of joy and thanksgiving. And the 4 cups represent the 4-fold promise which the Lord made to the Israelites in Egypt, which were those 4 things that I read. So I'm always sort of interested in keeping track of what those 4 things are because they're emphasized. So everyone hold your glass of wine, and we will have that blessing. With 4 cups of wine, we recall each of the promises that were made to our people, as now the first, I am Adonai, and I will free you from the burdens of the Egyptians. And if you want to hold up your glass of wine, we take the Kiddush cup and proclaim the holiness of this day of deliverance. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. We praise thee, O God, sovereign of existence, who creates the fruit of the vine. And you can have a little sip of the wine. And then we continue. You have a variety of things on your tables. We're going to do some things with them, and then at another part of the service, I will tell you what the meaning of all of those is. In the spring of the year, the season of rebirth and renewal, we look at the parsley, which represents rebirth, renewal. Everybody take a piece of parsley, and you have salt water on your table, and you just want to dip this parsley in the salt water, and you can just put it on your plate while we wait till everybody does that, and then we're going to have a blessing. just hold it or let it on your plate. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adama. Praised are you, Adonai, sovereign of existence, who creates the fruit of the earth. And you're supposed to eat a little bit of this. And you don't have to. But that's what we do. Okay. So we're talking about this matzah. In this matzah cover, there are 3 pockets. There's 3 pieces of matzah in here. One, whoop, I feel like I'm doing a magic trick. Here's the 3 pockets. So you take, so this was a big deal. The kids decorated them and somebody sewed them up. I'm going to have to ask my son to tell me more about how he made this. So we take the middle matzah and we break it in half, and this piece is called the afikomen, which means dessert. It's a word that could represent dessert. So I guess many years ago, people tried to figure out ways to keep children entertained during Passover because the service is incredibly long sometimes, and kids just don't stay awake and don't like it. So the tradition is this piece, the afikomen, gets hidden and somewhere in the house where they are. And then during the meal, the children are allowed to get up from the table, so they're supposed to find this, and they're supposed to ransom it. So, I guess if you lived in a family where you could ransom it for a new bicycle or something, that would work. In my family, we would get a silver dollar. But the tradition is that the service doesn't continue. The service, you must eat a piece of the afikomen as a dessert at the end of the service. So if the kid who found it is ransoming it for something that the person who they're ransoming to doesn't want to give them that, then I guess they could just hold up the whole service. But typically, that's never happened in my lifetime. But, so we're not going to ransom this. I'm just going to put it. You know what? I'll just put it down here at the bottom because I don't have any prizes for anybody. And then this matzah, we're just going to put back in. I believe we're going to need that in a little bit. So that's the afikomen. Now somebody has to remember where it is because otherwise we won't remember. So going on in the book, now I break the middle matzah and conceal 1/2 as the afikomen. Later we will share it. As in days of old, the Passover offering itself was shared at this service in Jerusalem. Among people everywhere, sharing of bread forms a bond of fellowship. For the sake of our redemption, we say together the ancient words which join us with our own people and with all who are in need, with the wrongly imprisoned and the beggar in the street. For our redemption is bound up with the deliverance from bondage of people everywhere. And then we move on to other things here on our Seder plate. Oh, okay. The uppermost of the 3 matzahs broken and distributed among the group. Then I'll read together. Everybody just take a piece of matzah instead of us distributing it. And we'll just get that. Yeah, you can get some. And you just need it. You can have a big piece or a small piece. It doesn't matter. And we're going to say a blessing over the matzah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. We praise thee, O God, sovereign of existence, who hallows our lives with commandments, who has commanded us regarding the eating of matzah. And now you can eat a little piece of the matzah. And now we take more matzah, and we're going to go to the dish of horseradish, which you should have on your table. Take a little piece of matzah, or a big piece if you want, whatever size you want, and put a little bit of horseradish on the matzah, and we have a blessing for that.
Maybe it's down there.
The horseradish is the white stuff.
Isn't that horseradish there?
Yeah.
That's horseradish. Figured. I even get it.
I think that was in there. Thanks.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Get a little bit of this. Matzah crumbs are getting me. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu al achilat moror. This means we praise thee, O God, sovereign of existence, who hallows our lives through commandments, who has commanded us regarding the eating of moror. Now everybody eat that while I choke. See if I can eat this without choking. Now, the next thing we're going to do is something that is a little bit newer tradition than some of these Seder things that we're doing that are quite old. Hillel was a prophet, a Jewish religious leader, lived around the time of Jesus. And he, I'm not sure why he did it, but he came up with the idea of combining the bitter herb along with this other mixture, which is called haroset. And it's a combination of apples, nuts, wine, and cinnamon and sugar. And that has become known as a Hillel sandwich. So we eat that now. You need another piece of matzah, and you need a little bit more horseradish and a little bit of this preparation. And there is not a blessing for that. It's just something else that we eat as a little treat. And it's supposed to represent the duality between freedom and slavery. So the sweetness of hope and redemption, of freedom, and the bitterness of slavery. The contrast between the two. Was that mine? Thank you. And I think in most households they make a lot of the haroset because it's pretty good. I've been munching on the leftovers of mine for a day or two since Saturday, and you can just eat that. Now we come to the part of the service that is another part that involves the children. There are 4 questions that are asked. And typically the youngest child who is able to do it recites the 4 questions. So when kids go to Hebrew school, when Jewish kids go to Hebrew school, that's one of the things that we learn. We all have to learn those 4 questions because you know in advance, but you would be called on for doing it. So when I was the only child in the family, I did it. And when my brother came along, when he was old enough, he was able to do it. And it's just part of the service that deals with, that allows the children to participate, although I guess they're always pretty nervous. So the questions are, why is this night of Passover different from all other nights? On all other nights we eat leavened bread or matzah, but on this night we eat only matzah. On all nights we eat all kinds of herbs, but on this night we eat only bitter herbs. And on all other nights we do not dip even once, but on this night we dip twice in the salt water. And on all other nights we eat either sitting or reclining, but on this night we eat reclining. So there's a little explanation that I found that sort of makes a little bit of this more clear. The first question talks about the use of matzah. We eat unleavened cakes to remember that our ancestors, in their haste to leave Egypt, could not wait for bread to rise, so removed them from the ovens while still flat. And the dipping twice in the course of the service, the greens in the salt water, and then the bitter herbs along with the haroset, once to replace tears with gracefulness and once to sweeten bitterness and suffering. And the fourth question asks why on this night we eat in a reclining position. To recline at mealtimes in ancient days was the sign of a free man. On this night of Passover, we demonstrate our sense of complete freedom by reclining during our repast. And that's the contrast between all of the years of the Jews having to eat quickly, having to not be able to enjoy a meal. So in my family tradition years ago, my uncle was the leader of the Seder for most of my lifetime as I was growing up. And he always had a big pillow on the chair. And any other time I attended a Seder at anyone else's home, there was always a big pillow. So it wasn't so much like reclining, but it was just a little more comfort than you normally would have. So those are the four questions, and each little Jewish kid knows how to say all those four questions. Still sometimes gives me chills having to think of having to do them, but that's what it was. Okay, moving on. Whoops. Oh, thanks. That's my four things. To page 34. So this next part is telling the story of why we're here doing this. So it starts out saying, there are many questions. Now we begin to answer. Our history moves from slavery toward freedom. Our narration begins with degradation and rises to dignity. Our service opens with the rule of evil and advances toward the kingdom of God. Therefore, even if all of us were wise, all of us people of understanding, all of us learned in Torah, it would still be our obligation to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Moreover, whoever searches deeply into its meaning is considered praiseworthy. And skipping over, this is really why we do this. This is the meat of the story. I took your father Abraham from across the river, and I led him into the land of Canaan, and I increased his descendants, and I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob. When Jacob and his children went down into Egypt, Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph had emerged with power over the land of Egypt. There was famine in all lands. But in the land of Egypt there was bread. And Pharaoh said to the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he tells you, you shall do." And all the world came to Joseph in Egypt. After Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us then deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies in fighting against us and gain ascendancy over the country." So they set taskmasters over them with forced labor, and they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. The Egyptians embittered their lives with harsh labor at mortar and brick and in all sorts of work in the fields. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out, so that the Egyptians came to despise and dread the Israelites. So Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, "Every boy that is born shall be thrown in the Nile, but let every girl live." We cried unto Adonai, the God of our ancestors, and God heeded our plight, our misery, and our oppression. And God said, "I will go through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will mete out justice against all the gods of Egypt, I the Eternal." And God brought us out of Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, and awesome power, and by signs and portents, not through a messenger, not through any intermediary or any supernatural being, but the Holy One alone in solitary glory. So now we do something that's a little messy, but we're going to do it anyway. There were 10 plagues that were rained down on the people, and to commemorate each of those, you can we're going to put a drop of wine on our plate for each one of the 10 plagues. If you don't like sticking your finger in the wine and just putting it on the plate, you can use the spoon, you can spill, you can do whatever you want. But I'm going to say the Hebrew word for the plague and then the English word, and then we're just going to do like that to represent each plague. And the first one is blood. Dam is the Hebrew words. Dam. Sephardeia is frogs. Kinim is lice. Arav is wild beasts. Dever is blight. Shihin is boils. Barad is hail. Arba is locusts. Hosha is darkness. And the last one is Makat Bechorot, which is slaying of the firstborn. And then you can lick your finger. Or use your napkin. And I have a note here that says, see other book. Let me see what I wanted to read out of there. So this is just a little more explanation. This is another Seder book. There's so many of them. And some of them have a little more explanation than others. Some of them have less. But I've found a bunch of things that I thought were sort of relevant to just add to what what you're going to learn tonight. So this is just a little bit more about the 10 plagues. When Pharaoh defied the command of God to release the Jewish people, he invited adversity upon himself and his own people. Through the plagues that were visited upon the Egyptians, though the plagues that were visited upon the Egyptians were the result of their own evil, we do not rejoice over their downfall and defeat. Judaism regards all men as children of God, even enemies who seek to destroy our people. When, for the sake of our welfare, they met with suffering and death, we mourn their loss and express sorrow over their destruction. A full cup is the symbol of complete joy. Though we celebrate the triumph of our sacred cause, our happiness is not complete so long as others had to be sacrificed for its sake. We shall therefore diminish the wine in our cups as we recall the plagues visited upon the Egyptians to give expression to our sorrow over the losses which each plague exacted. And then it says we now recite the list of 10 plagues and pouring off wine of each one. So that's the idea of putting less wine in, making less wine in the cup. And now we're going back here. So we have some things here that we've looked at already and some things that we haven't seen. So we're going to go over these. And it says here, according to the Mishnah, Rabbi Gamaliel, who is one of the a Jewish leader many centuries ago, said, whoever does not consider well the meaning of the three Passover items that we're going to review has not fulfilled the purpose of the Seder. So the first thing it's talking about is, these are actually chicken bones, but they represent a shank bone. So I have 2 bones here. What is the meaning of this bone? In family groups, our people ate the paschal lamb when the temple was still standing. For them, the Pesach, or the paschal lamb, was a reminder that God passed over, Pesach is the word, passed over the houses of our ancestors in Egypt during the redemption. In our day, too, we invoke God as the guardian of the household of Israel. As in our dwellings, we renew the family bond and strengthen our ties with the whole household of Israel. And now we're supposed to look at the matzah. What is the meaning of this matzah? Of old, matzah was meant to recall that the dough prepared by our people had no time to rise before the final act of redemption. And they baked unleavened cakes of dough, since they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared provisions in advance for themselves. To the driven of the earth we link ourselves today as we fulfill the mitzvah. For 7 days shall you eat matzah, that you may remember your departure from Egypt as long as you live. I should add, here, almost all of this text that I'm reading is from the Bible. There are little, if you look in the books, there's little annotations on the side where a lot of this is from the book of Exodus, obviously, because it's the story. But it's the lives of our people, as it is written, with hard labor at mortar and brick and in all sorts of work in the field, with all the tasks ruthlessly imposed upon them. So those are the three things that we did not, and we did not talk about the egg. This is a roasted egg, or it's actually a hard-boiled egg, but it could be a roasted egg, and it from the burdens of the Egyptians. Now we're going to have the second cup of wine. With the second cup of wine, we recall the second promise of liberation. As it is written, I will deliver you from their bondage. And the blessing is, same as we had before, we praise thee, O God, sovereign of all existence, who creates the fruit of the vine. And you can drink the second cup of wine. And if you need to refill, there's more. And now at this point in time, the books would get put aside. The little plates with all of the stuff that we've been using would be put aside. And we would have a meal. So typically it's a brisket. We had a lovely brisket, didn't we, on Saturday night? You could have a chicken, you could have a turkey. You would not cook a ham because we don't eat ham, especially not on Passover. We had a brisket, and we had a delicious potato dish called a potato kugel. If you've had potato latkes, have you ever had potato latkes? There's potato pancakes, hash browns, so sort of the real basic. So to make potato kugel, you just make the same recipe as you would make the potato pancakes, and I always cook it in a cast iron skillet, and it's a great big cake. It's like it's like a cornbread, if you can imagine cornbread, but it's potatoes and eggs and Crisco and salt and pepper. And it's just real crispy on the outside and real soft on the inside. And we had some vegetables and we had some dessert. So that's the dinner. And then and also it mentions in here that it's customary to begin the meal with hard-boiled eggs flavored with salt water. And this says, we did that as well. This was the practice in Roman times. The egg has come to be symbolic of new growth, of new life, of hope. And the roasted egg on the Seder plate has come to represent the ancient temple service in Jerusalem, the holy city. So we had that. And sometimes people make chopped liver, or they'll have a fish appetizer, or just many things. But it's a really nice, it would be sort of typical of your Easter meal or a Christmas dinner, just a really, really nice, fancy dinner. And then comes the search for the afikomen. And here's what it says in this book about that. Toward the end of the meal, the children look for the afikomen, which the leader has hidden. Since neither the meal nor the Seder can be concluded before some of the group has eaten a piece of it, whoever finds the afikomen may demand a reward. Nothing is eaten after the afikomen, so that the matzah may be the last food tasted. The afikomen replaces the after-dinner entertainment, an aspect of ancient Roman feast that the rabbis eliminated from the Seder so that the entire evening might be devoted only to the observance of Passover. So I guess in previous times they had dancing and singing and God knows what else. Yet song and festivity remain a part of the Seder feast, including some planned merriment for the children appropriate to the service. And throughout this book there are a number of songs. It will say, now you should sing this song. I told the story on Saturday night. I have two sons, and they both have always been musical. My avocation. I was trained as a classical clarinetist. I played clarinet forever. That's how I know Kathy. And my children both are musical as well. And there's a place in the book where it says to sing a song called Pesach Time. For the amusement of the children. It says that right in the book. Sing that song for the amusement of the children. So we looked in the back, and the song was there, and they were able to read music, and we all looked at it, and we all figured out how it went, and we sang it. And then later on, one of the kids looked at it again and said, Mom, that song's not in a minor key. We sang it in a minor key, and it's in a major key. So we decided we better sing it again. So, Saturday night we did not sing Pesach Time. But it is a fun time. There's a song that goes on and on and on, sort of like a rebus, where things keep getting added on and on to the story. And it is sort of fun, but it's interesting to see that the afikomen has to come at the very end, so you don't eat anything else. So I'm just going to pass this around. We'll each take a little piece of this and have a little corner of it. You want a little corner of that? I'm sure there's enough. Just get a little corner of it, pass it around. It won't be a big crisis if we don't all do that. And there is no blessing for that. But we do have the blessing after the meal. Let's see if there's a short part of that I can read while we're passing the afikomen around. If anybody needs another piece, you can have it. So, friends, let us say grace. The name of the Eternal be blessed from now until eternity. Let us praise God, of whose bounty we have partaken. Let us praise our God, of whose bounty we have partaken, and by whose goodness we live. Through God's kindness, mercy, and compassion, all existence is eternally sustained. God is forever faithful. Surpassing goodness fills all time and space. Sustenance there is for all, none needing ever lack, no being ever wanting for food. We praise our God, the one sustaining all. And build Jerusalem, O God, speedily in our days. We praise our God, whose compassion ever builds Jerusalem. On this feast of the Matzo, inspire us to goodness. On this day of liberation, make us a blessing. On this festival of Pesach, preserve us in life. All merciful, rule over us forever. Sustain us with honorable work. All merciful, may we inherit a Sabbath of eternal peace. Make us worthy of the messianic promise of a world that is yet to be. God will give us strength unto our people. God will bless all people with peace. And then we come to the third cup of wine. Together we take up the cup of wine, now recalling the third divine promise. As it is written, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. And the blessing, as we did before, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. We praise thee, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has created the fruit of the vine. I'll drink the third cup of wine. I will share with you once, when I was a teenager, my cousin, who was also a teenager, she and I decided we would drink each of the 4 cups of wine fully. We were very sick. We did not do well. Now, the next thing we have is, you've been drinking out of that cup. Okay, it's all right. Well, I need some wine. I'm going to use this one. I guess I should have told you not to, but that's okay. We have a special cup of wine. Just have a little bit more in here.
Becky, why is it Manischewitz?
Pardon me?
Is it, you use Manischewitz only?
There's Manischewitz and there's, what's the other brand? There's
Mogen
another-
David.
Mogen David. I like the Manischewitz better. So you're going to have this one. When you drink more wine, you're going to have that one. Okay. And they're both kosher. They're both kosher wines.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's the.
Okay.
They're both kosher wines. So this cup is called the Cup of Elijah. And here's the story about Elijah. Elijah the prophet from the village of Tishbe in Gilead challenged the injustice of the king and overthrew the worship of Baal. He healed the humble sick and helped the widowed. As to the end of his days on earth, his disciple Elisha had a vision of Elijah being carried to the skies in a chariot of fire. Legend has it that Elijah returns to earth from time to time to befriend the helpless. This man of mystery became associated with the end of days, with the messianic hopes of our people. The prophet Malachi promised that Elijah would come to turn the hearts of parents to children and the hearts of children to parents, and to announce the coming of the Messiah when all mankind would celebrate freedom. Hence, he has a place in every Seder. We open the door that he may enter and set a cup of wine to represent the final messianic promise for us and for all peoples. I will bring you into the land. So the service goes on. The injustice of this world still brings to mind Elijah, who in defense of justice challenged power. In many tales from Jewish lore, he reappears to help the weak. Our people always prayed, may the All-Merciful send us Elijah the prophet to comfort us with tidings of deliverance. For every undecided question, then, of pain and sorrow, of unrewarded worth and unrequited evil, Elijah would someday provide the answer. There are links between heaven and earth which promise an answer and resolution to life's perplexities. Elijah opens up for us the realm of mystery and wonder. Let us now open the door for Elijah. So a child would be sent to the door and open the door. And we read a little bit more. From beyond, Elijah's spirit enters in these walls and tastes again with us the wine of endless promise. I will bring you into the land. And you shut the door. And kids always would watch that glass to see if you could see somebody drinking it. Because we wanted to think that somebody came in. In my years of Passover Seder, one year at my grandmother's house, somebody went to open the door for Elijah, and there was a man from the community who had come to visit us after his Seder was over, and he was standing at the door. So for many years it was a joke in my family that he was Elijah. It's just another sort of interesting piece to all of this. And then we come to the fourth cup of wine. As our Seder draws to an end, we take up our cups of wine. The redemption is not yet complete. The fourth cup recalls us to our covenant with the Eternal One, to the tasks that still await us as a people, called to the service of God, to a great purpose for which the people of Israel lives, the preservation and affirmation of hope. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Peri Hagafen. We praise thee, our God, sovereign of all existence, who has created the fruit of the vine. And I think I did not read, and I will take you to be my people. So if you remember in the beginning, I said we had four different statements. I will free you, I will deliver you, I will redeem you, and I will take you. Now you can drink the last of your wine. And then we just have a little bit more that we conclude with. The Seder service is now concluded. Its rites observed in full, its purposes revealed. This privilege we share will ever be renewed until God's plan is known in full, God's highest blessing sealed. Peace, peace for us, for everyone, for all people, this our hope. Next year in Jerusalem, next year may all be free. Lashana haba b'Yerushalayim means next year in Jerusalem, which has been something that we've said for years and years and years. And there's a song that you could sing at the end. That's the conclusion. So you've had the meat of it, without all of the extra gravy or anything.
Without any meat.
Without any meat. So I'm just going to sit. Does anybody have any questions?
How long does a typical Seder last?
You know, it can last hours if you read every single word. Yeah, I didn't bring the other books. If you were looking at that book, you could. Many people read everything. There's an enhanced text in here and explanations. My recollection when I was little was that it lasted 3 days. I mean, it just seemed like it was never over. But how long did we must have had maybe an hour and a half before we ate supper on Friday. It's a long evening. It takes a while. And then I think, Jews just sort of make their own. I've seen, the 20-minute Seder that you can get that just goes through everything real fast. My younger son and his wife went to a Seder at some Orthodox Jews' home in Baltimore a number of years ago, and there had to be some craziness going on there. But he told me that they didn't even start cooking the meal till after the Sabbath. The Seder was on a Saturday night, and Sabbath Sabbath is over at sundown. So apparently they didn't even start cooking the meal until 8 o'clock or whatever time sundown was. And then they were waiting for people to come. So my son and his wife were there, and he called me the next day and he said at 2 o'clock in the morning, we just got told them we couldn't stay any longer. They were not even through the service and hadn't had their meal, but that they just were, you know, Orthodox Jews, very religious, very wanting to do everything exactly perfect. So they read every single word, and you know, he's told me they didn't think they would go back to that Seder again because it was just way, way too long. So we were talking earlier about the fact that the Passover Seder was the Last Supper. The Last Supper was a Passover Seder. Does everybody know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that for a very long time, but I recently learned it. Any other times? What?
The timing.
The time. Well, we were talking earlier about the timing that how did we explain all of this? The Passover, if sometimes Easter is before Passover, and it doesn't make sense that if the Last Supper was the Passover Seder, that you could have Easter before we have Passover.
Yeah.
But evidently that isn't necessarily an issue. But I know there are some churches, the Antiochian Church and the St. Nicholas Orthodox, there's an Orthodox church in Johnstown, their Easter is always after Passover because they calculate it on the Julian calendar, and Passover is calculated by the Jewish calendar, which is very similar to the Julian calendar. This is where you brought my little nose. I was trying to figure this all out today. The Julian calendar is, Jewish calendar is lunar, and the Julian calendar is solar. So I guess there are some differences. Do you know about the differences? I think those are very similar, but the Gregorian calendar is different. The Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar, but they're set up differently. So I guess if you want the holidays to coincide, then you have to wait till the Jews have Passover before you can have Easter. And some years that happens. This year it's the same. It works out correctly. But somebody I was talking to last night said last year, I think Easter was way early before Passover.
March.
So, but it doesn't make sense. And we were talking about this earlier, and I think the answer was it just doesn't, it doesn't matter. According to the church, it doesn't matter, which is odd. But it makes sense if you think about you have to wait till we have Passover before you can have Easter,
yeah.
if you want to consider the Last Supper as the Passover Seder.
Well, originally, with a 10-month calendar before the Julian calendar,
Yes.
and then they added the 2 months,
Yes.
for Augustus Caesar, right? That's where August came from.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would
Yes.
throw everything in this.
And then in the Jewish calendar, there are adjustments as well. The Jewish calendar counts years from the biblical date of creation. So our Jewish calendar, this is like year 57 something because it starts with the biblical date of creation. So, we don't think it's 2025, but in order to adjust, the same as we have leap years in the Gregorian calendar, there are leap months. Some years the Jewish calendar has an extra month, and that sort of makes everything settle out. But it's quite curious and quite complicated. Do you probably understand?
A little bit of the science,
Yeah.
all that.
It's just tricky. I was sort of agonizing over trying to figure this all out yesterday and today. And, I guess it's just as easy to look it up somewhere. When does Passover start? When does Easter start?
Yeah.
So you said that the Seder can take hours with the ritualistic readings and everything.
Yes.
Okay. Because I remember Reverend Don Kayampa did a Seder many years. I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And what I remember from that was when the exile, when they left Egypt, they ate in haste.
Yes.
So the way he conducted that Seder, it was like boom, 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 boom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I must have,
went
we didn't
fast.
have any Jewish people,
Uh-huh.
lead, just what he studied. And so we went through, we had no service with it, but when we ate,
You ate fast.
we ate
Huh.
one, and then said something about the other, and then ate.
Uh-huh.
And I think we had egg back then. I think he had hard-boiled egg
Uh-huh.
with it. And that was my next question. Do you, in traditional, do you eat the egg?
We
or-
ate our hard-boiled eggs as an appetizer
Oh, okay.
on Saturday night with an egg and salt water. Just
Yes,
hard-boiled
yeah,
egg and salt water.
yeah, he did that.
Which is, it's mentioned in here, so I sort of thought it was maybe just something my family did, but I think it's something that a lot of Jewish people do.
Okay, yeah, that's the way he explained it, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Trying to recall.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting though that he would move, move things along quickly, because I would think, as it referenced in here, you can take your time now because we are not any longer in servitude. We are not having to hurry.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
the idea of relaxing and making it extend as long as you need to make it is acceptable to me. It makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. And I know most Seders are not, they're only quick if people just want to cut them down a little bit to the real bare bones. But most of the time they're pretty lengthy. During COVID, I think we had 2 Passovers during COVID. I'm sort of forgetting a little bit, but COVID started in March. Our sequestering, our not going anywhere started in March. And my synagogue decided, this is 5 years ago now, my synagogue at that time was not at all well set up for Zoom services. I think many churches have done Zoom, or broadcast services for years, but my synagogue never did. And so, and the best what they had to offer was a conference call. So if you wanted to participate in Friday night services, as soon as COVID started and all through the time that we were not allowed to gather, you would just call in and you could participate on the phone at a service. The rabbi led the service, and it was okay if that's what you wanted to do. But they offered that they would do a Passover Seder on this conference call, and I thought, it's bad enough. I was at home. I was by myself at the time, and I remember it's bad enough. I'm home by myself, and now I have to do the Seder by myself. Oh my God, I can't do that. And then I thought, yes, I do. I need to do this. So I made a meal, and I got all the stuff ready and dialed in, and I could not get into the call. And here, I think there were a number of organizations, groups, synagogues, homes, I don't know, using similar conference call lines. And there were I was not the only one that could not get on the call. So I was really just so upset. And as I said, I have 2 sons, and they were both, one's in Baltimore, one's in New York City. And I knew that they were both doing something for Passover. So I texted the younger son because he belongs to a big synagogue, and I thought maybe there was a link. He could just send me a link for the Zoom call that I could just get on right away. And he texted back and he said, we're on the call, but he said, I'm not in charge of the link. The rabbi is, and they're somewhere. He couldn't help me. So I texted the other son, who's in New York, and he was doing a Seder at his home and Zooming in his 2 best friends who live elsewhere in New York, and the 4 of them were on a call together. He said, give me a minute, I'll send you a call, send you the link. So I got on the Zoom call. So I had my dinner and my Seder plate and my computer, and we just did it all together. It was so nice. And then when it was time to eat, everybody was holding up their food, because my son is a real foodie. He posts all the food he ever cooks online. He's just crazy about cooking. And his best friend, James, is even more so a foodie. So between the 2 of them, I knew that their food was just out of sight. So, they're going, oh, what do you have here? This is this, and this is this. It was really fun. It was really a very nice thing to do during a horrible, horrible time. And then I think the next year I did the same thing with Philip and his family, and that worked out nicely. We manage. Manage it as you can. Anything I didn't explain well?
No, thank you so much.
The only thing I could say is going through the Seder for now, I'm Presbyterian. And of course it was, even though I grew up with, that's how I met Becky, and grew up with a lot of Jewish kids in the high school and junior high. We never got into too much. We went to the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs and that type of thing. We had the enjoyment with them. But even back then it was different for having dinner with the family. And nowadays it's so rushed that hardly anybody has dinner with all the children and everything. But this is still at least once a week in the Jewish family. They get together. And they
Well,
sit
Friday
down
night,
to meal.
Friday night or
Yes,
Sabbath
Friday
meal,
night,
yeah.
Sabbath meal.
And I can tell you, at least in my family, and I know some friends and acquaintances that I know, since the events of October 7th in the Middle East, a lot of people that I know are seeing things a little differently. My older son said he lights Friday night candles every Friday now, just because he feels he needs to do something to be in touch with our heritage and our people. You know, no matter what you think about what all happened, I mean, you know, it was just a pretty horrible thing, and a lot of people were sort of doing a little bit more than they might have otherwise, just because of connecting to all of that. And families, you know, families all travel for Passover. I guess it's like coming home for Easter or coming home for Christmas. So we will be eating matzah for the next week. And there's a couple things, I guess I could talk to you a little bit about how people have Passover. I said earlier tonight, 3 Jews, 4 opinions, and that's kind of the way Judaism is. There are many sects of Judaism, from the ultra-Orthodox and the Hasidic Jews that you see with the curls, the sideburns and curls, and the big fur hats, down to the Reform, who just, you know, may do some things and not do a lot of others. But if you're super religious, you get all of the food that is not allowed out of the house, and you can sell it to people who will distribute it to the poor. So in some communities there are people who go around, I can't remember what they're called, but they will go around and get all the food that people do not want. And then you have to make sure that it says kosher for Passover. So we were looking at the box of matzah that we used tonight. So this says, it says in several places on the box, well, this is perfect for Passover, but it says kosher for Passover. There's a seal on it. Where's that little seal? Oh, up here in the corner, there's a seal on it. Kosher for Passover. This was prepared separately from the other matzah that is out there in the world. And there are many things that you do not eat, and you don't eat anything that has leavening in it. So, and anything with flour that has leavening. This is flour, but it's not leavened, so that means it's okay. But no bread, no pastries. For our dinner on Saturday, I made a flourless chocolate cake, which was awesome. It was delicious. But you wouldn't eat, no bread, no rolls, nothing like that. Cereal, you could eat rice cereal. You would not. Well, cereal's probably okay because it's not risen. But really, Orthodox Jews would be very strict about what they bought. And you just don't eat it for a whole week. And then at the end of Passover, you can go back to having whatever you want. But matzah is kind of like the mainstay. You can make fried eggs in matzah is a really good thing. Fried matzah with scrambled eggs is a treat. There's a lot of jokes about matzah that people get so sick and tired of it. But and then in my household, I have not been super religious for many years, just purely by choice. So I eat matzah. I will not eat bread. I will not eat anything cake or anything like that. It's not allowed. But I haven't bought anything else that's just kosher for Passover. Partly because, as we were talking about earlier, it's not available around here. We live in a community where there's just nothing. I was telling the ladies that helped prepare all this tonight, when I went looking for matzah, I live in West Matzah, the Giant Eagle in Richland had matzah, but not much of it, and nothing that said kosher for Passover, which was unusual because in other years they have kosher for Passover matzah. The Giant Eagle in Westmont had no Jewish food of any sort on the shelf. And I asked the manager about it, and he said, we have a new distributor and we're not able to get this stuff. So there was nothing. We bought this matzah in Indiana at Martin's. And if we had not been able to find the kosher for Passover matzah in Indiana, I was prepared to drive to Greensburg because I was going to have it for this Seder. I have matzah at home that's not kosher for Passover, but I wanted the Passover stuff just because this is what we're doing. But, you know, in previous years and years ago, you could find more kosher for Passover food. The Jewish community is small, so I don't know that it matters a lot, but it's just not right, and it's weird. But I can understand the store just having a different, you know, a problem with the distributor, just how it went.
You said about the Hasidic Jews. Our son lived in Cleveland, and the area that he lived in, he was renting, was predominantly Hasidic Jews.
Oh.
It was very interesting to see, you know. But on his door frame, the front door was a wooden.
It's called a mezuzah.
Okay.
There is a portion in the Torah that says you should put the name of God on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. So Jewish families have that it's a little hollow thing, and in the inside is the scripture that says what you're doing. It's a particular section of the Torah, and it's in our prayer book. And that's put in there, and that just identifies a Jewish home.
Okay. Ross
then-
thought it was very interesting.
If you've ever seen Fiddler on the Roof, I'm real close to that because I was a part of a project. I am a part of a project where we did it at Pasquarella Performing Arts Center just in November. When the family went in and out of the door, they always kiss the mezuzah, and that's just acknowledging God's presence in your home. So I have that on my house.
Yeah, we were there. We saw it.
Yep.
It was very
Another
good.
thing we were talking about on Saturday night with my friends, my neighbors who were Catholic, our Catholic came over for our Seder, and we were talking about the man that was there worked for Gallagher's. A couple of you have heard this already. Worked for Gallagher's, and they made some food kosher for Passover every year in the Gallagher's plant, and he was responsible for overseeing a lot of this stuff. And he said a rabbi from Toronto would come to Johnstown, come on Friday, stay overnight on Saturday during the Sabbath. So he would just celebrate his Sabbath here, and then on Sunday morning, bright and early, he would come to the plant, and they would have everything clean, everything ready for separate preparation of all the food that Gallagher's made for kosher for Passover, and then the rabbi would leave. And I guess the rabbi had told George about one situation that you're not supposed to turn on. So if you're really, really religious, you're not supposed to do any work, and that can go as detailed as you don't flip on a light switch because that's work, putting on that light switch. So there are people that are called Shabbos goys, and they will come and turn on your light for you. They will turn on your stove if you don't. So many Jewish families, this all gets very complicated and sort of down rabbit holes. But many religious Jewish families will prepare a meal on Friday before the Sabbath and let it cook on the stove, or just keep it warm all day long on Saturday for the Sabbath, so they have it. Those people would need to have a Shabbos goy come in and turn a goy is a non-Jew, turn the stove on, because again, you're not allowed to do any work. I observed something like this when I visited a friend in a nursing home, a Jewish retirement community in Pittsburgh, on a Saturday, and I was going up in the elevator, and somebody said to me, "Don't take the elevator to the far left, it stops on every floor." And I said, "Oh, why?" And they said, "It's set up on Saturday, it was Saturday, it's Shabbos, it's the Sabbath. it's set up to automatically stop on every floor so that the the real religious people do not have to push the button to get the elevator to go. I mean, you know, when you hear those kinds of things, you know, sometimes you want to say, my goodness, what is all this about? But that's the way they live. It's like the Amish. Somebody said on Saturday, it's like the Amish people who live in these little sort of cloistered communities with all these ideas. It's really fascinating. And then, you know, so many people just have different levels of observance or lack of observance.
How they observe the law according to how they feel is
Yeah,
proper, I guess.
yeah. It's really quite interesting. It's I don't know if any of you have seen, there were a couple of shows streaming. There was a show called Shtisel that was on Netflix, and it was about an Orthodox Jewish family in Israel. It was all in Yiddish. It was not, you had to read the subtitles, but it was just fascinating, the things that they did and the ways that they behaved, and very interesting. But I think, you know, you could maybe compare that to the way nuns live and the way you know, there are religious orders that live in sort of those same kind of cloistered or segmented communities. I'm talking a lot. Anything else?
No, that's all very interesting.
So did I explain everything clearly? It's understandable?
Yeah.
Good. Well, you're welcome to have more wine. You're welcome to eat more. The rosette is the only thing I advise eating more of. Or the matzah.
Yeah, for sure.